Love myself. Love myself. Love myself. Love myself. Love myself. Love myself. Amazing opportunity. I'm Bennie Herron. I'm an artist, a father, a husband. My art is my life, and it keeps me grounded. And everything that I stand for is to try and add on and make people reflect on how they can be better and never subtract, always add on. And I'm a loving man, and I lead with love, and I hope that's what the world sees with my work. My current work is actually standing around me at the Mason Exhibition Gallery in Arlington, Virginia. My work, the name of the show is The Origin Stories, and currently I'm working on trying to collaborate with multiple entities in the community throughout the DMV, but I'm just trying to share my work, share my story. Hopefully I'll be doing some collaborations with the Anacostia Art Center soon, as well as the Home Gallery in DC, and look for some work possibly taking place in California as well. Trying to share it so people can feel it and become a part of my work. Most artists, we kind of talked about that before, like most artists kind of like, oh, we usually kiss or talk about our day or at least hold hands. But tonight, we just lay, thinking our way back home. Wow, my directive was my upbringing, and as a Black man, wow, you know, I am originally from San Diego, California, and I grew up in a loving, loving home with my mother, Patricia Herron, rest in peace. My father, he's still alive and currently residing in California. And I have 4 sisters. One of my sisters passed away a few years ago. But my upbringing was a balance of love, pain, triumph, resiliency. I mean, I don't think my upbringing was too different from anyone else's in America or even abroad. But I will say that, you know, one thing that stood out to me, it wasn't until I was probably 13 or 14 where I realized we didn't have certain things. And what I mean by that is monetarily. I never looked at us as poor. I thought that we had everything that we needed. Our home was loving. My father provided. He was a hard hat father, worked in construction, janitorial services, worked with his hands. And my mother was a stay-at-home mom, was always home when I arrived from school or different activities. And, you know, it wasn't until I got older and my context of the world started to shift, and I realized that my parents were working to create a different dynamic for myself and for my family and my sisters. And what I mean by that is they were raising us to overcome some of the things that they had to overcome. We usually kiss or talk about our day or at least hold hands. But tonight, we just lay, thinking our way back home. Approach in life, that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to create a place for myself and for my family where we're thriving. We're not just surviving and trying to meet the ends and make ends meet, right? And we're trying to live and be prosperous because this world is for all of us. And sometimes our worlds are so small, we think that only our community in Southeast San Diego or Southeast DC or wherever you're from is your only context. But there's so much more. And if you can't go, read. If you can't experience it, write about it. And just try to tap in. And that's what my mother and my father tried to embody in me, that I don't have to be subjected to everything that's around me and in my experience. I am much more. I am a part of my experiences, but my experiences aren't who I am. Wow, me as a black man, as an African in America, as an African, um, man, since I was 12 or 13, um, I've been so immersed in art, hip hop, music, culture. Um, my experiences were so grounded in a thirst for wanting to know who I am and where I come from. And it was even, as simple as certain certain rappers and rap groups like X Clan would say certain things in their music, and I'm like, I don't know what that is, but it sounds like I need to know it because they were so emphatic and so enthusiastic about using certain terminologies, like talking about the Dogon people and talking about the Orisha and Kemet and things like that. I would, go to my local library or my library at school and try to find these things. So I always had sort of this duality when it came to what people perceived me as a black man versus what I wanted to be and who I was on a journey to become. And what I mean by that is I grew up in a neighborhood, predominantly a gang neighborhood that was known for a gang by the name of the Bloods, the Red Team, right? And I grew up around that context, but that context of sort of a underground criminal lifestyle, these were my friends that I grew up with. Like, so I didn't even know until I got older that I was experiencing something that was potentially dangerous or that could affect me, right, or my family. But I was like on sort of this parallel course to understand who I was and at the same time who I was in my community. And I always was accepted for that. For some reason, my friends that maybe even went into the gang life saw. I see it now as I'm older. I see it as maybe they saw something in me that said, you know what, he's a little different. We're not going to insulate him or keep him safe in that way. They weren't necessarily protecting me, but they allowed me to be myself. And even my family, they didn't understand me at times, but when I would come home wearing my red, black, and green medallions and my bright dashiki colors and doing all my dance routines in the house and volunteering to do poetry or dance at African American events, they either got out of my way and let me do my thing, or they supported me. But I looked at both of them as a means of support because they didn't try to stop me. They let me be me. And I think for black men, that's so important because we have this, we wear the mask type of mentality where you have to present yourself a certain way in society so that maybe people can feel safe around you. And that can be very tiring. I am who I am. I'm creative. I like the beach. I like walking in the sand barefoot. I like, I like shopping at Whole Foods and doing all these different things. And from a very young age, that's been who I am. But society often will say and look at me and say, oh, you're different. And I'm like, I'm not really that different, because at the end of the day, as men, as black men, as human beings, we all want the same things. We all want to be loved. We all want to be protected. We all want to be embraced for who we are. And from a very early age, now that I've gotten older, I was sort of put on a path to understand who I am and what makes me happy. And I think happiness is underrated. We don't stress happiness enough because that fuels our security and safety and self-love. And when you're not in a happy place from within your own home, which envelopes out into your community, which envelopes out into your city, which envelopes out into the world, oh man, it's really hard. It's really hard to be who you truly are and understand what your purpose is. And so I don't know if I'm making any sense, but from a very early age, I feel like that thirst for knowledge, that thirst to understand what I am and who I am and my history and story prior to or before, slavery in this world, and having understanding that having a story outside of our experiences just in this country as slaves and overcoming things in this country, understanding our history, that I have a story and I'm connected to the world, was so important to me and so enlightening and gave me so much strength. And I would hope that in some way, shape, or form, not everyone can drink the same water I drink and walk the same path, right? But find your own way to tap into who you are and make you sound and in your own, rooted in your own self-love and self-respect. So
where's your heart? Look around you. Where is the sun? Look above you. Where are your brothers? Look beside you. Where is your freedom? Look inside you. I didn't know we were so poor. Powdered milk with a little teaspoon of sugar. Tasted just like regular milk. Just a little gray in color. Hand-me-downs weren't that bad either. Well, they were for me, because I had 4 older sisters. So my hand-me-downs came in shoulder pads.
for my style, I think it's more of my approach. You know, when you look at the finished product of my work, you know, some would classify it as, you know, neo-expressionism, um, even, you know, sort of an abstract medium at times. But I'm heavily influenced by, um, I shouldn't even say influence, but for years, I considered myself a graffiti artist. Um, and, you know, that sort of layering that takes place, you know, sort of in the graffiti medium, you know, connecting certain lines and textures and color schemes and palettes is, you know, sort of what makes graffiti what it is. You know, you're sort of telling a story within a story within a story within a story, and then when you step back, you look at the whole thing, and then it tells one complete story again. You know, kind of the multi-layered piece that I was talking about earlier. You know, and there's, in this piece in particular, it says Scottsboro men. I'm going to give you an assignment. Do your research on the Scottsboro men. I want you to find what that means for you, and I want you to take that journey on your own. I'm not going to talk about it, but in the neck lining of this piece, it does say, "Seems to be the only way they hear us," and that's an excerpt from one of my poems where I'm talking about in the work that we have to present ourselves a certain way and to be accepted and to be taken as serious, or be, you know, or to not be seen as a threat wearing your hoodie, for example, so that other people can feel safe. And the Scottsboro men and the story of these young men sort of ties directly into that thinking. And, you know, I try to, again, you know, allow the work to be so layered. And it's not that I'm doing this on purpose, but I just can't stop sometimes. The work ends up becoming so layered. You know, my wife will take a picture of the eye and she's like, this is a painting in and of itself. And one of my good friends that I used to, you know, paint with back in San Diego, he would always remind me of that, you know, when you look at the whole piece, that tells a story itself, of course. But, you know, what are you saying in these different small moments of the piece? What are you saying with the lips? What are you saying with the eyes? What are you saying with this complex ear unit, you know, that in essence, it tells you it's an ear, but what does this really represent? And I can tell you what it may represent to me, but for me, that's not what's important. It's what you perceive it to be and how it makes you feel. And I try to paint so that, if this makes any sense, but I want you to see my paintings as something that you can taste, something that you can hear, something that you can feel, something that makes your stomach a little uncomfortable. And that's the same thing I try to do with my writing. Try to give you layers of emotions and feelings and tones that evoke something in you that you may like or you may dislike, but it's true to that moment. So that's what this is represented by in this work.
Knuckles carved mercury open, wiring novelist to arrows shot across neon arms that grab little miracles for the sun. Impressions of pressure against a million spirits react to Sambo. His naps represent earth, his lips pucker, sweet to suck, vertical back to horizontal. He shaves horizons with fingers, Marian arms. They wed to moonshine shots, staggering in metronome, on beat with the offbeat, dancing to a skin tone. That blue, black, midnight, blue trip to oblivion. His shadows protest. We shall not be moved. Irony. It's all movement. It's all movement. Triggers turned into tablets and notebooks and shootouts with evolution. Whole decades decay, ash to matter, from dying to living in a matter of matter. Fact, tradition, track, color, fiction. Fathers in his poems, mothers in his sentence. Blues belly up at his feet. He's a maker of eyes, fate, and dreams, giving every word a heartbeat, every lament a context. Poverty his kingdom, all things reversed. Death first, then magma, then life, then the boiling flesh to comrade, distance in his breath, millenniums in step, millenniums in step. The violets in the sky, but the love in his chest.
Wow, cultural forces. You know, first and foremost, I'm a human being, and the older I get, the more I realize that I'm a humanist, and I understand that there's really only one human race, and trying to scale that back and get to sort of the meat and potatoes of that sort of thinking and existence. There's a lot of layers you got to work through. But I understand who I am. I understand that I'm an African American. I'm an African. I'm a black man. I was once a Negro, as far as the textbook definitions, right? And how we were defined. And sort of my cultural experiences are driven by understanding that there's a oneness to our existence. And everything that I do, I try to tap into that oneness. And you know, I had to start at home. You know, I consider myself to be, you know, one that adopts, you know, Pan-African thinking. You know, that there is one Africa, which means there's one humanity, there's one man, there's one woman. And my work and who I am as a human being, I try again. I know I sound cliche and I sound, you know, repetitive, but that's who I try to be. I try to be an example of that in my life, in my existence. You know, I want to be able to share the best of myself with people, so that I can help them tap into the best of themselves. And the cultural forces that move me and my work, you know, I'm heavily influenced by jazz music, hip hop music, soul music, you know, the black arts movement of the 60s and the 70s, you know, the Black Power movement, even the civil rights movement. You know, I stand on the shoulders of my ancestors, and I try to see, when I look at our lineage, where do I place myself in that lineage? Or if someone were to place me in that lineage, where would they put me? I'm actually working on a collection of poems that starts from the year 1619 to the present day. And each poem is sort of, some of them are short, some of them are small, but each poem represents a year of our experience as African people in this country. And I would like it to sort of be a time capsule of, from the very beginning of time, from 1619 to present day, what our experiences have been in this country. And, you know, I believe in sort of this, there's a principle called the Sankofa principle, a Ghanaian principle where, you know, the Sankofa bird looks back, and you have to know your past to move forward. And that's what I try to do. I try to tap in and understand that, you know, the people that came before me understand, um, I understand that that makes me who I am and where I stand, um, today. And hopefully I'm stronger because I understand that, and it moves me forward and keeps me grounded. And that's how I try to represent my life and my work.
Scarborough men who were accused, wrongly from things like Benny can probably identify with that, be through his history, and bring light to it again. So I don't know that it responds to everybody's social action or social issues that they're experiencing in their lives, but I think it's a deep reflection of his own. I thought that it would be a great full sensory moment for Benny's exhibition. So you have dance, you have his words that he's reading, words that he has written in his book, and his visual work. So it's just like an all-encompassing Benny cacophony of of sight and sound. So yeah.
So why art, right? Why not just become a writer or a teacher? And I consider myself all of those things, but art is has been a part of our experience, a part of our existence in this country since sharecropping to slavery. Understanding that our pain and our suffering was healed and managed through field songs, through hymns, gospel hymns, through field howlers, and understanding that, the way I see myself and my experiences, there's a cathartic and meditative essence when it comes to art and music. And art is a tool to ground you and keep you in a sane space when you may even be in the midst of insanity. At times in our experiences in this country as African and Black people, we've been in literally insane asylums, from plantations to uh, uh, co-opted, segregated communities. And one of the means to help us deal with it and cope, and our coping mechanism, was music, art, our creative nature, being able to take something from nothing and make it beautiful and make it feel good. Tying a old piece of rubber string to the side of a house and actually playing the house like a guitar. These are things that we did to overcome our pain and our suffering. And it became beautiful indigenous art. And my work and my art is an example and an embodiment of that. I will often tell people that if I weren't a painter or a poet, I don't know, I don't think I'd be, the worst person, but I probably wouldn't be as open and kind as I feel that I am if I didn't have an outlet. And I think that's where um, I find myself at peace. And I often tell people that the end result is what you see on the walls, right? But for me, I'm in love with the process. I'm in love with the painting process, the storytelling that I'm telling myself while I'm painting, the strokes. There's a certain meditative essence about it, and playing my music, or maybe even watching TV while I'm painting, or playing with my little puppy while I'm painting. There's a certain escapism and meditative state that I sort of find myself in, that now that I've immersed myself into that space, I sort of can't live without it. And what comes out of that meditative space, out of that sort of internal painting and stroking with the brushes and chalk and getting my hands dirty and getting paint on my clothes, is what you see before you. You see the end result. But for me, I'm in love with the process. And I often tell, individuals that I work with in the social work field, and my clients, that, the process is the pudding. Meaning that if you don't love the process of raising your children, if you don't love the process of being married, then you have some questions you need to ask yourself, and maybe you need to adjust in certain things. So painting for me is about the process, and the end result is just a cherry on top.
Oh, I'm tremendously pleased. I have, we got him covered in the Washington Post, which he's humbled and awed by too. And it was lovingly paired with 4 other galleries that dealt with other fatherhood kind of things. So I appreciate that they really took the time to like read the information and kind of come and look and offer feedback and beautiful critique. So I'm so pleased with that. I have friends that are interested in purchasing work. So for me also, like although we don't sell, I love to support artists, and artists need to get paid. So I'm happy that I can make connections for him to sell work. He's going on to work with, to have a show with the curator that I'm co-curating with on our next show, All Black Everything. Home Gallery will have a Bennie Herron exhibition as well. And he's also already worked with Jane Franklin Dance after our collaboration. So he's just, from the platforms that we've given him, he's definitely taking that and running with it, and I'm so pleased.
Yes. So I am originally again from San Diego, California. I went to got my bachelor's degree in psychology from San Diego State University, and I went on and received my MFA, my Master's of Fine Arts in Creative Writing from National University. Um, and I worked not in that field, so to speak, definitely in the psychology field, but I've worked in sort of the nonprofit social service sector since early 2000s. I before I relocated to this region in the DMV area, I worked in the prison system. I worked for a Senate Bill 618 program where we helped individuals sort of transition from incarceration into the community. So I was actually a community-based worker that went into the prisons maybe 18 to almost 2 years prior to them being released to help them work on sort of a transitional, individualized transitional life plan, so that once they transitioned out into the community, we can help curb and deal with some of the recidivism. And then from the community, I would work with them for another 2 years. So potentially I could work with these individuals for up to 4 years to help them transition, because statistically, individuals usually are reincarcerated and recidivate usually within the first year to 2 years. So if they can make it past sort of that grace or that window, the likelihood that they will not go back to prison or jail dramatically increases. Um, so, that's the work that I did while I was in California, and I transitioned to this region And I worked when I first came here, I worked as a child protective services investigator with Prince William County. Then I transitioned to another role while I was working in foster care. And most recently, as of 2016, I've been a father engagement specialist with Fairfax County, where we conduct trainings for individuals inside of our Fairfax County system, as well as outside in the community, to help individuals become more fatherhood friendly, and more welcoming to men and to the system and sort of the social structure, because traditionally men have often been seen, or fathers have been seen, as a nice have but not a must have. And systemically, things are changing, whereas when children come into foster care, the most jurisdictions throughout the country are looking at more kinship based, meaning more family oriented options, versus just bringing that child into foster care and placing them with strangers. So in looking at sort of that structure, if we're not communicating and connecting with the father, that is a whole different side of the family that is being neglected and as an option for a child being placed in care. Um, so I work to train community partners and internal partners on how to better include and engage men and fathers. And I actually teach a father engagement dad's parenting group, where I teach a parenting class exclusively for men and for fathers. And currently I was promoted, and I'm now the supervisor for that program. So hopefully within the next year to 2 years, we'll be really putting some effort into building our program up and making it even more fruitful for our community.
The summer is the perfect amount of time to cause some trouble. Month 1, devise a workable and deceptive plan. Month 2, execute that plan. Month 3, spend the rest of the summer staring at your friends playing through a window.
I've never not been an artist, so to speak, if that makes sense. I think what happened for me is that I gave myself the space to really explore it. But I've always painted, I've always drawn, I've always, of course, been a writer. Um, but I think, quite honestly, like a lot of people, the pandemic, quite honestly, the sort of sit down season, as I call it, sort of allowed me the space and time to really say, okay, I'm home. Let me explore this a little bit more. And most recently, my wife and I and my daughter, we moved into our own home. We purchased a home. So with that came the comfortability of being able to sort of get dirty. Right now, I'm in a space that I own. I can I don't have to worry about the paint splattering and things like that. So it kind of gave me a new sense of freedom as far as being able to explore, and sort of, around this space is the result of that. But I've always, sort of painted and tried to tell my story in different mediums. Again, I mentioned earlier that I'm influenced heavily by graffiti and hip hop and music. So if I'm not doodling, if I'm not drawing something, you know, to share with someone, I'm doing it anyway. Like I'm always in sort of that creative space. But again, having sort of the freedom to like really explore gave me like a new outlet to maybe share my work with some other people. And I'm thankful to George Mason for that, because I didn't do any of this on purpose. Like, it happened organically. Rick Davis actually saw me posting some of my work on Facebook, And he sent me an email. I was like, hey, do you, are you a painter? Do you share your work? Or are these even your paintings? And I'm like, yes. And he ended up connecting me with Jeff, and Jeff was like, hey, show me some more of your work. He came to the house, saw that it was real, and kind of evolved from there. And I ended up having a showing at the Hilton Performing Arts Center in Manassas, and then that sort of enveloped into my own more large social uh, exhibition with the Mason Gallery exhibition. So it it just happened organically. It's not like I said, this year in 2021, 2022, I want to be an artist now. Like it just happened organically. I was painting these things anyway. It was not, I was not uh, looking for an audience, so to speak. It just happened organically, and I'm grateful that people see a value in my work, and it tells me that I'm on the right path.
We make patterns out of ourselves. And the dense name of cowrie namesayers, we die from silence, come alive from refrains, muting our mouths with death songs and returning to the elephant's tusk like ivory long times, dancing like water, dancing like water. Like skin there where ears feed my Niger down, then up barely craving air, living off the ends of dawn's mouth, swallows open and hollowed in tongues and blues licks on symphonic sandstones that blow out free black radicals as the wind fought to not give way to a new slave way. But we are in resistance to colonial existence, so we pop to a soul pop and we watch this funk pop Theronius and monks pop Thelonious and then Biz marks the spot, but nobody beats the truth. Nobody beats the truth.
And I don't think anyone is, I think most parents do that, right? But what was unique about my experience was that my mother often expressed to me and to my sisters, what she failed to do as her own sense of self, and not losing your sense of self to only raise your children, to sacrifice who you are and what you want to accomplish for your family. And I think most people would be commended for that, right? That's what you're supposed to do as a parent. That's what you're supposed to do as a caretaker. But what I think she was trying to say, and what I try to embody now, is that you can take your children on that journey with you. You can still pursue your dreams and be a parent. You can still go back to school. You can still overcome some of the obstacles. It doesn't have to be all or nothing. And I think what was sort of unique for my mother, and especially my father, was that they didn't necessarily have a system around them and a culture around them based on their age and the society of that time. They didn't necessarily take those risks because they realized that for us to be happy, for us to be sustained, to have our basic needs met, food, clothing, and shelter, they had to almost lose themselves and only focus on us. And my mother would kind of express regret in that sometimes. She was worked in nursing, worked in the medical field, and once she had children, she realized that she always told herself she's going to go back. She's going to go back. And she would always tell me, do not do that. Do not lose your sense of self. Do not lose your sense of accomplishment. Even if you have children, you can do both, and it can be a parallel process. And in relation to that and the Black experience, I think we live in a very survivalistic state, meaning that we wear our survival on our sleeves and as a triumph, which is great. We can overcome, we shall overcome, right? But at some point, we have to transition from survival to living, because survival is tiring. Survival is erosive. It's backbreaking. It's heavy, right? And at some point, if that's your only existence and that's your way of being, it's only a matter of time you're going to break. Your knees are going to get weak. Your back is going to get tired. And that becomes your normal. And at some point, we have to transition from survival to living. Gray mother. We are sables. Every individual story. We are sables. Every individual is a story. A transcribed figure imposed against skin. We are edge pushers, dialoguing with passing whispers of our mother's drum. We speak our mother's drum, a language of diaspora. We defy depth, reach out for inroads, freeing songs from suffrage. We bend space. We leave it new with blues, constricting its distance. We leave with nothing behind. We digest unknowns, reinvent arm for leg. We live now. No dead monkeys, limbless from project to project. We wear this city like kente, drag mud into our mouths, ingesting its soil. We made you believe in the other side. We dissolved into the bayous, returning like ancient grandmothers, crying in pantomime, revealing ourselves to men, to touch, to earth, just hands, to men, to God, to earth, just us, revealing ourselves with a new and old English.